We pretended to be brothers for years. Our secret love shocked everyone at the reunion. The afternoon sun beat down on the backyard barbecue as I, Jameson, felt Blake's fingers linger on mine while passing the platter of burgers. Our eyes locked, and in that instant, 10 years of pretending to be brothers hung by a thread. Before I could pull away, Uncle Mike called out from the grill. "Hey, boys, you two always acting like you're attached at the hip. What's with the stare down?" Blake chuckled nervously, his hand dropping like it was burned, but the damage was done. The family laughed it off as brotherly banter, but I knew this was the beginning of the end for our carefully constructed lie. It all started 10 years ago at New York University, where the city lights and the chaos of freshman year threw us together in the most unexpected way. I was Jameson Hayes, the art major from a small town in Ohio, trying to find my place in the big city and figure out who I really was beneath the expectations everyone had placed on me. Blake Thompson was the business student from a strict family in Illinois, always with that quiet intensity that drew me in from the first day in our shared dorm. We bonded over late-night study sessions and cheap pizza, talking about everything from childhood dreams to the pressure of becoming the men our families wanted us to be. But it was during a rainy October night at a campus party that everything changed. The music pulsed through the crowded room, and when our hands brushed while reaching for the same red cup, a spark ignited that neither of us could ignore. We stepped outside under the dripping awning, laughing at how soaked we were getting, and suddenly the laughter faded into something deeper. Blake looked at me with those warm brown eyes and said, "I've never felt this way about anyone before." That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone in my confusion and longing. By the end of the semester, we were inseparable, stealing moments in hidden corners of the library or on late walks through Washington Square Park, whispering promises under the stars. Love felt like freedom, but reality pressed in hard. Blake's family was traditional to the core. Church every Sunday, Sunday dinners with talks of marriage and grandchildren, and a clear expectation that their only son would carry on the family business with a wife by his side. Coming out would mean losing their support, their home, and the approval that had shaped his entire life. I understood that fear because my own parents back in Ohio had their own quiet judgments about anything that didn't fit the small-town mold. So when graduation loomed, and we both landed entry-level jobs in Chicago, we made a pact. We would tell Blake's parents that we had become like brothers during college, that I was the orphan kid with no family left, and Blake had taken me under his wing. To sell it, we even crafted a backstory about how his mom had always wanted another son and how we supported each other like real siblings. They bought it completely. Mrs. Thompson cried happy tears on the phone, saying, "We've always wanted a second boy in the house." Mr. Thompson clapped Blake on the back when we arrived and said, "Welcome to the family, son." Moving into the Thompson family home in the leafy suburbs of Chicago was both a blessing and a daily tightrope walk. We had our own rooms on the second floor, but the walls were thin and the family was always around. Sunday brunches, holiday decorations going up in October, backyard barbecues just like this one. We kept our love hidden behind closed doors, careful with every touch and glance. Nights when the house grew quiet, we would meet in one room or the other, holding each other close and talking about the future we dreamed of but couldn't yet claim. Blake was my rock, the steady presence who listened when I ranted about my art not selling and encouraged me to keep painting. I was the one who made him laugh when corporate meetings drained him dry. Our private world felt safe, even if the pretense weighed on us. Family dinners became performances where we sat across from each other, passing potatoes and trading jokes like any brothers would. Holidays meant exchanging gifts that looked platonic but carried secret messages only we understood. The emotional toll built slowly at first. Every time Mrs. Thompson asked when I'd find a nice girl or when Mr. Thompson praised us for being such good boys sticking together, the lie burned a little deeper. Yet in those stolen moments, our love grew stronger, more certain. We were building something real amid the deception, and for a while, it felt like enough. Life settled into a rhythm that almost felt normal. I started working at a small gallery downtown, curating exhibits that let me pour my soul onto canvases after hours. Blake climbed the ladder at his father's logistics firm, coming home with stories of deals closed and pressures mounting. We attended family functions arm in arm as brothers, played basketball in the driveway with cousins, and even took brother trips to cabin rentals up north where we could finally drop the act and just be us. Those weekends were our lifeline. Long hikes where we held hands openly, quiet evenings by the fire where we talked about one day telling the truth. But cracks began to show. At work, colleagues noticed how often we texted each other and teased us about being joined at the hip. I laughed it off, but inside I wondered how long we could keep pretending without losing pieces of ourselves. Blake's mom started dropping hints about setting me up with her friend's daughter, and each polite deflection chipped away at my resolve. Still, we pushed forward, convinced that our love was worth the sacrifice. Little did we know that the misunderstandings and secrets we buried would soon demand to be faced, testing everything we had built together. One crisp autumn evening 2 years into our new life, a new friend entered the picture and complicated everything in ways we never saw coming. Alex Rivera worked in the marketing department at Blake's firm and quickly became part of our circle after a company happy hour turned into late-night drinks at our favorite dive bar. He was outgoing, funny, and had that easy confidence that made people open up. Within weeks, Alex was joining us for weekend hikes and family barbecues, treating us like the brothers we claimed to be. At first, it felt like a gift, someone who saw us as a unit without asking too many questions. We cooked dinners together, laughed over inside jokes, and Alex even helped me hang my latest paintings in the gallery. Blake relaxed around him in a way he rarely did with others, and I found myself grateful for the buffer he provided against the isolation of our secret. But as months passed, the dynamic shifted. Alex started noticing the little things, the way Blake's hand would instinctively reach for mine under the table at dinner, the lingering glances when we thought no one was looking. One night, after too many beers, he cornered me in the kitchen while Blake was outside grilling. "You two are closer than any brothers I've ever seen," he said with a knowing smile. "It's cool, man. No judgment." My stomach dropped. I played it off as exhaustion from work, but the seed of doubt was planted. Blake and I argued later that night in hushed tones, the first real crack in our foundation. He wanted to pull back from Alex, scared the friendship would expose us. I argued we needed allies, that pushing people away would only make the lie heavier. The misunderstanding festered. Blake grew distant at home, burying himself in work reports, while I threw myself into late nights at the gallery to avoid the tension. Our secret nights together became fewer, replaced by polite conversations about groceries and weekend plans. The love was still there, but fear had wedged itself between us like an unwelcome guest. Then came the first real betrayal. Alex had started dating a woman from accounting, and one weekend he invited us to a double date at a local brewery. To keep up appearances, we agreed. The evening started light, laughter flowing easily, but as the night wore on, Alex's girlfriend mentioned how sweet it was that Blake and I lived together as brothers. Alex, a little tipsy, leaned in and said, "Yeah, they're basically married at this point." The table went quiet. Blake's face paled, and I forced a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. Later, in the car ride home, Blake exploded. "He knows, Jameson. He's going to tell someone at work," and then my parents, his voice broke, and for the first time I saw real panic in his eyes. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, the hurt from our earlier argument still raw. That night we slept in separate rooms for the first time in years, the silence louder than any fight. The next morning, Alex texted an apology, claiming it was just a joke, but the damage lingered. We distanced ourselves, yet the rumor mill at Blake's office began to whisper. Colleagues asked if we were more than brothers, and Blake came home each night exhausted from deflecting. I sacrificed my own gallery opening preparations to be there for him, cooking his favorite meals and reminding him we were in this together. Through it all, our love refused to break. We found our way back to each other in small ways, a quiet hug in the hallway when his parents were out, a whispered, "I love you" before bed. But the incident taught us how fragile our world was. Friends could become threats, and every casual comment carried the weight of potential ruin. We grew more careful, more guarded, yet the emotional exhaustion mounted. Blake started questioning if the pretense was worth it, and I found myself wondering the same. Still, we held on, convinced that one day the timing would be right to tell the truth. Little did we know that a much larger storm was brewing, one that would force us to confront not just the world, but the parts of ourselves we had hidden even from each other. As winter settled over Chicago, the family dynamic shifted again when Mrs. Thompson's sister moved nearby and began hosting weekly game nights. These gatherings pulled us deeper into the brotherly role, complete with teasing about our single status and questions about future weddings. I watched Blake smile through it all, but at home his shoulders carried the weight of every forced laugh. One particularly cold January evening, after a game night where his aunt had tried to set me up with her neighbor's son, ironically a straight guy, we collapsed on the couch in my room. Blake rested his head on my shoulder and whispered, "I hate lying to them, but I can't lose them, Jameson. They're all I have." I held him tighter, feeling the sacrifice in his words. My own dreams of moving the gallery to a bigger space in downtown Chicago felt secondary to keeping our life intact. That night we made a silent promise to endure, but the psychological strain showed in small ways. Short tempers over nothing, nights where one of us stayed late at work just to breathe. Our bond remained the anchor, yet I began to see how the pretense was reshaping us, turning love into something that required constant vigilance. The misunderstanding with Alex had taught us caution, but it also deepened our reliance on each other. Through long conversations by the fireplace, we shared fears we had never voiced. My terror of being seen as the outsider who corrupted their son, his dread of disappointing the father who had built the company from nothing. These talks strengthened us, yet each revelation brought us closer to the edge of truth. Spring arrived with new hope, but the shadows of our secret followed everywhere, waiting for the moment when the mask would finally slip. Summer brought the promotion Blake had worked years for, but it came with strings that pulled our fragile world even tighter. The new role required more travel and longer hours, meaning less time for the stolen moments that kept us grounded. I supported him fully, taking on extra shifts at the gallery and handling more household chores so he could focus. His parents beamed with pride at family dinners, toasting their boys for their success. Yet behind closed doors, the distance grew. Blake would return from trips exhausted and distant, and I found myself wondering if the corporate world was changing him in ways I couldn't reach. One Friday night after he had been gone for a week in Atlanta, he came home and immediately went to his room without the usual hug. When I knocked softly, he opened the door with red-rimmed eyes. "They're talking about transferring me to the New York office," he said quietly. "Dad thinks it's the next step, but it would mean leaving everything here." Leaving me. The words hung unspoken between us. I pulled him into my arms, feeling the tremor in his shoulders, and for the first time in months we let the pretense drop completely in the safety of his room. We talked until dawn about possibilities, him turning it down, me moving with him under the brother excuse, but the fear of uprooting our carefully balanced life paralyzed us both. The betrayal we had feared from Alex resurfaced in the worst way possible. Unknown to us, he had mentioned our unusually close friendship to a mutual colleague during a team-building retreat. Word spread quietly at first, then reached Mr. Thompson through a golf buddy who worked at the firm. One Sunday afternoon, Blake's father pulled us both into the study after church. "Boys, people are saying things," he said, his voice steady but concerned. "That you two are closer than brothers should be. I told them it's nonsense, but I need you to set the record straight." My heart hammered. Blake froze beside me, his usual composure cracking. I stepped forward, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Dad, we're family. That's all." The lie tasted bitter, but it worked, for the moment. Mr. Thompson nodded, satisfied, and clapped us on the shoulders. But that night, Blake and I argued for hours. He accused me of not being careful enough around Alex. I countered that his growing distance had made me seek friendship elsewhere. The misunderstanding cut deep, reopening old wounds. We slept apart again, the house feeling colder than the winter outside. Yet the next morning, Blake slipped a note under my door. "I'm sorry. You're my everything. Let's fix this." We reconciled in the quiet before his parents woke, reaffirming our commitment with whispered promises and gentle touches that reminded us why we fought so hard. As the months passed, the psychological pressure intensified. I sacrificed a major gallery opportunity in Los Angeles, a chance to showcase my work nationally, because leaving Blake felt impossible. He knew what it cost me and tried to convince me to go, but I chose us. That decision marked a turning point in my own growth. I realized my identity wasn't tied to external success, but to the love we shared. Blake, in turn, began pushing back at work, negotiating to stay in Chicago. Our friendship with a few trusted colleagues deepened, though we never fully let anyone in. One loyal coworker, Sarah, sensed something but respected our boundaries, offering quiet support without questions. Her loyalty contrasted sharply with Alex's earlier slip, teaching us the difference between true friends and casual ones. Still, societal whispers followed us everywhere. Neighborly comments, online speculation, and local forums about the Thompson brothers, who never dated. Each one chipped away at our resolve. Through it all, we faced ourselves in late-night talks, admitting how the pretense had forced us to confront our deepest insecurities. Blake learned to value his own happiness over family approval. I discovered strength and patience. The love between us evolved from youthful passion to something deeper, forged in fire. Yet the big reveal loomed closer than we realized, hidden in the ordinary days that were about to shatter. Fall arrived with golden leaves and the kind of family crisis that changes everything. Mrs. Thompson fell ill suddenly, pneumonia that turned into complications requiring weeks in the hospital. Blake was devastated, spending every free hour at her bedside while I held down the house and kept his father company. In those long nights in the waiting room, Blake and I sat shoulder to shoulder, our hands brushing under a shared blanket when no one looked. The fear of losing her stripped away layers of pretense. One quiet evening, as machines beeped softly, Blake whispered, "If something happens to her, I don't want her to go without knowing the truth about us." His words hit me like a wave. For the first time, the idea of coming out felt not like destruction, but like mercy. We talked in hushed tones about the risks, his father's possible rejection, the business fallout, the community gossip, but the alternative, living with regret, felt worse. That hospital vigil became our turning point, shifting us from survival to courage. I held his hand openly for the first time in years, right there in the sterile hallway, and it felt like breathing after years underwater. Mrs. Thompson recovered slowly, coming home with strict instructions for rest. The family rallied, but the close call lingered in everyone's eyes. Blake threw himself into caring for her, and I supported from the sidelines, cooking meals and driving to appointments. In the quiet moments after visitors left, we planned. No more half measures. We decided the upcoming Thompson family reunion in July, attended by aunts, uncles, cousins from 3 states, would be the moment. The shock of the event would be massive, but the timing felt right after the health scare. Preparation brought its own challenges. We practiced the words in our room at night, role-playing reactions, crying through imagined rejections. Sacrifices loomed larger now. Blake prepared to step back from the company if needed. I readied myself to lose this second son status I had grown to love. A final misunderstanding tested us when his cousin visited early and asked pointed questions about our dating lives. Blake snapped defensively, and we argued again, but this time we resolved it faster, recognizing fear as the real enemy. Our bond strengthened through the honesty. As spring turned to summer, we grew more certain. The love that had survived 10 years of hiding deserved daylight. We faced our reflections in the mirror each morning, seeing men ready to claim their truth. The reunion approached like a gathering storm, beautiful and terrifying, but we walked toward it hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. July's sun blazed over the rented lake house, where 50 Thompsons gathered for the annual reunion. Laughter echoed across the water as kids splashed and adults grilled. Blake and I arrived together as always, but this time the air between us crackled with purpose. We helped set up tables, played volleyball like the brothers everyone expected, yet every shared glance carried the weight of our decision. Lunch passed in a blur of potato salad and stories. Then, as dessert plates were cleared, Blake stood. His voice shook only slightly when he asked for everyone's attention. "Mom, Dad, everyone, Jameson and I have something to say." The yard quieted. I rose beside him, our shoulders touching. "We're not brothers," Blake continued. "We never were. We fell in love in college, and we pretended to be family so we could stay together. We've been together for 10 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Thompson's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Thompson's face hardened. A cousin dropped her fork. The emotional storm broke instantly. Questions flew. Tears flowed. Accusations mixed with confusion. Someone shouted, "How could you lie to us?" Blake's voice steadied as he spoke of the fear, the love, the years of sacrifice. I added my own truth, explaining how the pretense had nearly broken us, but ultimately made our bond unbreakable. The misunderstanding of a lifetime unraveled in real time. Every hidden glance and careful word now laid bare. The hours that followed were raw. Some relatives left early, others stayed to talk. Mr. Thompson pulled Blake aside for a tense conversation that ended in silence, not anger. Mrs. Thompson hugged me tightly, whispering she had suspected but was afraid to ask. Betrayal hung heavy in some eyes, yet unexpected understanding emerged from others. Alex, who had driven up for the reunion, approached with genuine remorse, admitting his loose words had started rumors but that he respected us more now. The climax stretched into the evening as we answered questions, cried together, and held each other openly for the first time in front of them all. The psychological weight that had pressed on us for a decade lifted in waves, painful, exhilarating, freeing. By nightfall around the bonfire, the family began to process. Not everyone accepted it immediately, but the love in the room shifted from conditional to curious. Blake and I sat side by side, hands intertwined publicly, feeling the truth settle into our bones. The reunion that started as a performance ended as the beginning of our real life. We had faced the consequences, hurt feelings, awkward silences, shifting family roles, and emerged stronger. Growth came in the quiet conversations that followed, apologies exchanged, boundaries set, new understandings forged. Our journey of identity, once hidden, now stood in the open air, ready for whatever came next. The months after the reunion brought healing none of us had expected. Mr. Thompson eventually sat us down and admitted the shock had forced him to examine his own rigid beliefs. He didn't fully understand yet, but he chose love over tradition, keeping Blake in the company and inviting us both to Sunday dinners without the old scripts. Mrs. Thompson became our biggest advocate, sharing stories of other families she had quietly researched and reminding relatives that family meant acceptance. The loyal friends who had stood by us, Sarah from work, a few cousins, formed a new circle of support. Misunderstandings still surfaced, like when an old neighbor asked awkward questions, but we faced them together with honesty instead of fear. I opened my own small gallery downtown with Blake's encouragement, and he negotiated flexible hours to travel less. Our love, once confined to shadows, now flourished in daylight. Weekend brunches where we kissed goodbye openly. Holidays where we were introduced as partners. The sacrifices we had made no longer felt like losses. They had shaped us into men who knew their worth. Blake and I grew in ways the pretense never allowed. Therapy sessions helped us process the years of hiding, and shared dreams replaced the constant vigilance. 10 years of secrets gave way to a future we built openly. We bought a house near the lake where the reunion happened, a place where family visited freely and friends celebrated without pretense. The emotional journey had tested every part of us, identity, love, acceptance, but it had also revealed our strength. Friendships that survived the reveal grew deeper, those that didn't taught us boundaries. Society's pressures eased as we stepped into advocacy quietly, supporting local LGBT youth programs and sharing our story when asked. Through it all, the bond between Jameson and Blake remained a constant, richer for every challenge overcome. We stood on the back porch one crisp autumn evening, watching the same sun that had witnessed our first public slip years earlier, now setting on a life lived truthfully. The road had been long, filled with pain and beauty, but we had arrived whole. True or false? Hiding your true self for the sake of family harmony is worth the pain of living a lie.